remarks as well.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for pinch hitting with this subcommittee today, and thank you to our witnesses for joining. This is a critically overdue hearing today, and in all my years on this subcommittee, I've never felt as frustrated as I do at this moment. And one of the points of frustration is the request that I've made directly to expect a Senate-confirmed appointee to testify today, someone who can provide answers but also take responsibility for the failure to pay out Chapter 35 benefits on time. We don't have that. While I recognize that VBA doesn't have a confirmed undersecretary, it's abundantly clear from VA's stonewalling to multiple congressional inquiries and its written testimony that this administration has no intention of taking responsibility and instead is trying to shift our attention and the blame onto the previous administration. Our veterans and VA beneficiaries deserve a lot better. Forget about pointing fingers. VA responsibility is to serve veterans. When mistakes or unexpected developments occur, VA also has a responsibility to communicate with those same veterans. And veterans expect VA to work with Congress to solve the problem. As I've always said on this subcommittee, congressional oversight is important regardless of who is in the White House, which is why, Mr. Chairman, we and our veterans have come to expect public and involved supervision of what VA is doing or not doing, no matter which administration is in charge. We have not had that. In fact, in all my years on this committee, I've never experienced this level of stonewalling before. The Trump administration and its VA have deliberately failed to communicate with Congress, and more importantly, the affected beneficiaries, as they try to hide the mess that's been months in the making. VA has issued little to no public acknowledgement for months about the 75,000 beneficiaries whose benefits have been delayed. There have been minimal communications for months to schools and beneficiaries themselves. And there's been zero communication with Congress, unless you can count the letter that we received back that didn't answer our questions at 5:45 yesterday. 3 letters that were sent from members of this committee that went unanswered for a month and a half. In fact, VA officials refused to formally acknowledge this problem until a briefing on December 5th. That's December 5th. VA knew in September that it had a problem because they sent requirements to Accenture to try to address the backlog. It took 4 months between this problem being identified and Congress being updated. 4 months, during which tens of thousands of beneficiaries were left without any information. There's just no excuse for an egregious lack of communication around an issue that affects so many veterans. Any reasonable person would conclude that a deliberate political decision was made to cut off communications with Congress and veterans to avoid accountability and to hide the problem. VA continues to refer to the problem simply as a tech issue or a glitch, yet contradicts itself in written testimony. Now, I'm glad that the ranking member of the Tech Mod Subcommittee, Ms. Baczynski, could join us today, along with Mr. Barrett, to explore that issue. A glitch implies a malfunction. There was no glitch. The software worked as expected. VA's planning factors and assumptions were wrong. VA failed to validate the assumptions and failed to react when things did not go as planned. Now, the real glitch, the real malfunction here is VA's unprecedented failure to communicate with beneficiaries, the public, and Congress. This administration and its VA can try to misdirect our attention by blaming the previous administration, but let's do a quick review. The decision to conduct data reconciliation by hand in 2024 was due to VA cultural distrust of automation and the accuracy of the information in the databases. This has not changed between administrations. Now, regardless of how we got here, Secretary Collins' VA was in charge in August when things began to spiral, and throughout the last few months of ignoring veteran and congressional inquiries. For example, the decision to shift to automate some of the claims reconciliation and processing only occurred once VA was late on 75,000 claims and was looking for any possible help. So regardless of what the previous administration set forth, VA could and should have tested the data reconciliation process to validate the assumptions on the time that it would take. June or July would have been great for that to occur. The Trump VA can point to planning that took place in December 2024, but they came in and continued that plan. The absence of decision-making or oversight for 9 months is just as damning as the original planning. VA failed to follow guidance from the White House on who to furlough during the government shutdown. Government employees working on funded programs like these mandatory VA education benefits were direct to work. Yet the information technology staff needed to test and field the automation updates were furloughed and not brought back until the day before the shutdown ended. Worst of all, this administration made the decision not to communicate with veterans, families, and survivors impacted for 4 months. People in our districts were in the dark, about what was going on and why their benefits were not getting paid. One of my constituents from Manchester contacted our office and said, quote, "Due to an error with the VA benefit system, I have not received my education benefits so far this semester. The call-in line that I and the University of New Hampshire Veterans Center staff use to resolve such issues has been deactivated for the duration of the shutdown, leaving me dead in the water. My wife's salary has so far covered our rent and food, but we're at risk of losing childcare for my son due to non-payment as well as having to miss car payments," end quote. The financial stress put on him and his family is evident. It's also unacceptable. We've been elected to advocate on behalf of our constituents, yet VA refuses to do its most basic job and ignores our inquiries for months. I think we all agree that veterans and their families and their survivors deserve so much better, and we deserve bipartisan advocacy on their behalf when government fails to uphold its promise and deliver the benefits they've earned. The only question is, will we in Congress hold the administration, like any other administration, responsible for fulfilling that promise? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.